Kayfabe Cards, your ultimate destinations for all things tabletop in Riverton, Utah. Uniting enthusiasts under one roof, we proudly showcase Flesh and Blood, Pokemon, Magic, Weiss, and One Piece, a gateway into an exhilarating universe of gaming. Immerse yourselves in our diverse products, including a very squishy array of Japanese plushies and the excitement of Gashapon machines. Our expansive play area invites you to duel in epic battles and forge unbreakable bonds with your fellow players. We open our doors every day at noon, embracing a realm where cards come alive and unforgettable moments are forged. Come join us at Kayfabe Cards.
Do you always find yourself gambling on the plays of subpar bronzies? Stop wasting your time in a game where your teammates constantly drag you down. Join us at Rivalry.com, where your victories and losses only reflect your decisions.
This is the Instant Speed Podcast, episode 105, ladies and gentlemen. And before I even get started, I want to tell you to go vote for the Speedy Awards for 2023, of which, I mean, we did it last year. It was super awesome. LSS is involved. They're giving me some prizes to give out to the people who get voted in. Ultimately, it's the prestige that doesn't exist that you guys can make up in your mind about the Speedy Awards. If you go check out the Instant Speed Podcast at Instant Speed Pod on Twitter, there should be a link pinned for voting for that stuff. But beyond that, we got an episode to do. And today's episode welcomes, here, I'm just gonna read it verbatim for what I wrote. There's no more, there's no more pomp and circumstance when it comes to these intros. People know who you are. I don't need to pump your tires, okay? But I'll just...
Fine, you can feel free.
I figured if anybody's gonna just give me the green light on this. All right. Here it is. The Instant Speed Podcast welcomes the runner-up of Pro Tour Baltimore. She's an accomplished and renowned artist and has been decreed as the Empress of Volcor by none other than James White. Welcome to the show, the mother of dragons herself, Mara Faris. Hello, Mara.
Hey, Blake. Thanks for having me.
Hey, don't worry about it. No. So yeah, today's going to be it's been a rocky few days for me. So I'm glad you're here, because if there's anybody that doesn't take any BS, and if there's anybody whose confidence can blot out the sun, it would be you.
Is it confidence or ego?
It could be both, frankly. Is it ego?
It's a little of both. There's a joke in my local circles that people shouldn't ride in cars with me after a large tournament win, because my ego has a gravitational field and it could pull other cars into us.
Yeah, well, I hear on the regular the standard amounts of slander that gets tossed your way from Logan and Charmer at Flush and Pod, and I mean, I'm no stranger to it as well. They like to toss barbs my way now and then.
I have never heard Logan say anything about
he on occasion
about author of the Stoic.
Stop it! I swear to God.
All right.
What's funny about this is that this has kind of taken on a life of its own. Where, like, I was on Siblings in Cardboard podcast last week. And they asked me about it. And I was like, do I have to explain this? And I didn't. So I did, rather, and I won't again. But what's funny about this is that purely by random chance, late last night, I'm on the couch. I was watching some hockey, and then after that, late in the evening, I watched reruns of Game of Thrones. And it was like a season 2 episode where Daenerys refers to herself as the Mother of Dragons, and she's all uppity about it, and she's all arrogant and entitled and stuff. And I was like, what a perfect segue into our guest today, Mara Faris.
You gotta have pride in what you do. I think that's important.
I think so too. I mean, you have to absolutely have pride in what you do. You need to be confident in your own successes and your progress and things like that. Otherwise, frankly, there's so many people out there in the world who are ready to tear it down. Trust me, I know. I get that every now and then in the comments and tweets and this and that. It is what it is. But let's talk first about this really quickly, about the bans and suspension announcement, of which you and I have no real stake in it, I suppose. I mean, the announcement was basically, okay, Lexi's gone. She takes with her Voltaire. As a consequence in CC, Bullseye Bracers is back, and Soul Reaping banned in Blitz. Any comments on
my sideboard has a stake in it. I think I just freed up like 8 cards out of my sideboard for not having to deal with Lexi anymore.
Well, that's okay. So that aside, and that we're gonna get to that specifically, like the post-Lexi world, but with this, I mean, the reinstatement of Bullseye Bracers and such, like with Lexi out of the rotation, was there anything that you may have suspected would get a look from a ban or restriction or suspension perspective?
Oh, no, not at all. I think LSS pretty clearly stated in their last BNS that this ban and suspend announcement coming so close to Worlds was really just to make sure that we can get Lexi out, and if need be, get Icelander out before Worlds. They kind of already had said, they're like, unless something is just catastrophically wrong in this meta, we don't really have any plans on doing anything, which was super cool on them, I think, to be able to say, we're going to do this so that we can make sure that everybody knows Lexi is gone, but we're not going to like go upending this metagame, 2 weeks before Worlds.
Oh, definitely.
Which I like that. I think that's a really good. I think they did that the one time in the Starvo meta where they made a ban announcement like right before a major tournament, and I think it upset a lot of people. So I'm glad to see LSS kind of learning from previous mistakes and adjusting, and I think that's really good for them.
I'm trying to think of what might actually have been in somebody's crosshairs. I mean, there's always the people who are mad at particular cards in their local metas that continuously beat them. There's a lot, obviously, the standard procedure of hating on cards like Warmonger's Diplomacy and Codex of Frailty, things like that. Whatever.
If you listened to Twitter, it was Tumulti, Chromai, and Rake the Embers, despite the fact that Dromai is not even the best deck yet. People are already like up in arms over them not banning cards out of Dromai already.
Well, what's fascinating about this whole thing, especially from the perspective of a community-based like checks and balance system, is that Gwent is currently in the initial phase of their community balance maintenance mode, as it were. Like, they're not putting out new content, and what they're saying is that you, the community, will vote on what cards get tweaked, be it more power, like buffs or nerfs to a certain degree, be it from the cost of the card or the power of the card. Like, those are the two metrics that they can go up one or down one with. And the first wave of these, which I sat back with popcorn in hand, because being so intimately involved in that game, the ins and outs of it for 5 full years, I heard about how the community was always the smartest one in the room when it came to balancing things, and now the first balance wave of community stuff came through, and nobody's happy, because obviously they're not happy.
Of course not.
They were all emotionally driven. I hate this class, so I'm gonna nerf every card in it, and then that was essentially the result of it. And I'm wondering, would you trust the community in Flesh and Blood to do this?
God, no. I love our community with all my heart. Our community is not a bunch of game designers, and it shows. And I mean, like, I don't even think I would trust myself to make those calls. Like, balance is a delicate thing, and it's something that is very easy to just slightly overtune or slightly undertune something and throw an entire system out of whack. So, like, I as a general rule put a lot of faith in LSS and believe that, like, they're making a lot of thought and a lot of testing and a lot of checks before they're making any kind of balance calls. And I don't think anyone in the community has tested an entire metagame with Lexi without Three Oak or with Dromai without Chromai and Rake the Embers. Like, people are just kind of picking a power card and going, just remove that one, and then that'll solve the problem. And I don't think that's how balance actually works.
Right, because it's very easy to just point, click, and delete something without actually having to put the work on the back end to figure it out. And that's like the part of it. It's like, we will take your advice when you put in 50 to 100 games with those particular parameters against all the other classes to see exactly what the issue is. It's not easy, and it's not always perfect. And, like, I'm not here trying to say that LSS always gets it spot on, but I mean, I think that for this ban and suspension announcement, I think we're fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think we've ever had a ban and suspended that I was just like vehemently opposed to. Like, you know, there's always a couple of them like, well, maybe they could have done something different. But again, like I'm not the one testing these numbers, so like,
well,
as a general rule, I feel like once I see a ban and restricted, I'm like, yeah, that's actually pretty smart. Like even like stuff like bullseye bracers, I always felt like, you know, like it clearly didn't like dramatically drop Lexi's, you know, market share, but I think just having little tweaks like that make a difference.
Well, that, like the words you used there were me. Like I have never been like that's the thing about it is that because your deck, your sphere of passion was not, you know, disturbed in any significant way for the most part. And I feel you on that because there have been bans and suspension announcements where there have been people in an uproar based on the fact that nothing's changed or too much has changed or this is gone or that's gone. I think that if we're going to do a retrospective on the impact of the bans and suspensions over every single one that's occurred, I think it's overwhelmingly positive in terms of how they've been approached. So we'll see how this one goes.
Yeah, I even like looking back at some of the ones that the community did just cry, just like, this is death to the hero. This is unplayable now. And then those heroes went on to just do like fine. Like Winter's Wail is the immediate one that comes to mind. When Winter's Wail got banned, everybody on Twitter and in most of social media was like, Oldhim is dead, deck is garbage, we can't do anything now. And then Oldhim won a pro tour. Like
against who, Mara Faris?
I don't know, some nobody.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what you have a little bit more of a stake in, something you are a little bit more passionate about. This is actually you, and we were going to get to this, but you actually sort of poked the bear on this before I even put it in the show notes, which was, hey, new Living Legend announcement for the system, etc. And I've got stuff to say. So I just want to bring people up to speed. Yesterday being November 6th here in North America, there was an article that was released by James White basically saying we've reshaped and reimagined the Living Legend system, and the TLDR of it is basically this: things are worth more points, and the check of a hero's ascension to Living Legend will occur every Monday with to be put into effect the coming Friday, the following Friday of it. So essentially, if something gets their points over a weekend, on the Monday, is it 1,000? On Friday, it's banned. That is the sort of the new marching orders. Now, you have hit us with your initial impressions of this change.
All right, so I'm kind of glad to get a chance to really talk about this because I did make some posts on Twitter about my opinions on some of this, and it's very hard to really dive into like nuance on Twitter, like when you're really limited on characters. So like I think a lot of people kind of misunderstood the way I feel about things. So as far as like the actual points updates, I think this is fine. I do have a very slight concern for the people like me that are really wanting to dedicate to a single hero when we can see heroes, you know, skyrocket from, you know, next to no points to threatening Living Legend very, very quickly. But overall, I really like the Living Legend system. I think the system is good for the game. I think it is good for the health of the game in the future, you know, and especially, you know, they're talking about releasing 15 new heroes next year. You know, I don't want us to end up in a position where like League of Legends is in, where like League of Legends right now, for those of you who don't play that game, has something like 170, 200 characters in their roster at this point. It's wild. Like it is impossible unless you are just like super dedicated to just have any idea what your opponent is doing half the time in that game. And you know, I don't want League of Legends, or I don't want Flesh and Blood to turn into that. So like having this system to be able to meter out, you know, okay, we're adding in this many heroes, we want to make sure to rotate out this many heroes so that we can keep kind of a stable roster, I think is a good idea, and I think it's a good thing for the game. I do want to see a quicker turnaround on these like replacement heroes, but I think that's something LSS is aware of, and I think it's something they're working on, so that we don't have people like the Prism mains who were sitting, you know, for like a year just waiting on their replacement hero. And I think that's the thing LSS is working on. I have every faith that they are trying to get these new kind of replacement heroes out more quickly, and I think that's a big part of this like new 15 hero push. The part that I am concerned with is this we want to have the Living Legend check every week, and I do understand what they're wanting to achieve with this. When we get into like ProQuest season and things like that, this idea of stale metas has been thrown around a lot lately, especially with Lexi, because Lexi was the most dominant deck in the meta for, six or 7 months at least. Like we've had 2 set releases that have come out since Lexi, and neither of them have really felt like they've scratched the meta, much at all. And so I understand this idea that like they want to be able to, when a hero is threatening Living Legend, to just cut that hero out immediately and then go, okay, cool, now we have a fresh meta, come back. Those of you who were tired of the meta, you can come back now and you can come play again, and look how exciting this is going to be. But the problem is, with such a short turnaround on banning a hero, one, I don't think it's going to have as much impact on attendance for these events as they think it's going to, just because, like Progress season is 3 weeks. If Lexi LLs that first week, then like the number of people that were just like, oh, I don't want to play in a meta because of Lexi, are now given 5 days notice to say, oh, I wasn't planning on going to these ProQuests, but now Lexi's gone, now I'm interested in a ProQuest, but like I wasn't prepared for it. I don't have a deck. I have to like just throw something together, and like, so you might get a couple of people turn out and just like try something wacky, but like I think a lot of people are still just gonna go, well, that's really cool, I'm glad Lexi's gone, but I wasn't prepared for this, I'm not ready for this, and so I'm probably either still not gonna go, or I'm just gonna kind of do whatever. But then on the other side, now you put people in a position where they're like, oh, Lexi's very close to Living Legend. Man, I really would like to play Lexi for this ProQuest season, but I'm not comfortable putting in reps on Lexi anymore, because if my hero LL's in the middle of the season, now I'm just stranded without a deck. So like, I think you're going to end up with at least as many, if not more people that either just are going to play their hero until it LLs and then just not show up for the rest of the ProQuest for the rest of the season, or are just not going to play those decks. And we may end up in a position where we're just like actively disincentivizing people who can't afford multiple decks to just play at all, or to like not play the deck that they want to play. Like right. if you're a Lexi main and you're just like, oh, well, I want to play my hero, but then if she LLs, I'm just screwed for the rest of the season. I guess now I'm just gonna have to try to just pick up a different deck so that I'm insulated from that ban, and that's a feel bad. When you tell somebody like, hey, we know there's a deck you want to play, the deck is legal, but you don't want to be like, we don't want you practicing that deck, we don't want you really playing that deck, because it might go away and it might get pulled out from under you very quickly.
Right.
And then I think the biggest concern more than anything I have is the impact on the casual scene. LSS has been very vocal that they want to support the casual scene, that they want to really grow that casual player base. And I think those are the players that are going to suffer the most from this, where you can have a situation where, Timmy Bravo main, goes to his Saturday armory, plays his armory, goes home, doesn't check Flesh and Blood Twitter, doesn't check, isn't real up on Flesh and Blood social media, just likes to kind of play at his armory, and that's it. And then, like Bravo suddenly wins Worlds, gains 300 LL points, and then Timmy is going to show up at his armory the next Saturday and have to be told, sorry, Timmy, you can't play that deck anymore. You can't even play today. Like, there's no lead time. There's no, like, that's already kind of a thing in the LL system, but at least right now it's, hey, Timmy, your hero LL'd. You've got a couple of weeks to try to find a new hero. Let's start figuring out what you want to play. But under the new system, he's going to show up at Armory and just be like, oh, I just don't get to play today. I'm just done. And, you know, I have a very real concern that that's going to turn a lot of casual players away from the game to know that their hero can just disappear out from under them in less than a week span. And that concerns me.
So, okay, I got to rewind here. So the first thing that I want to mention.
Sorry, that was a lot of stuff I want to kind of.
But it's good. It's good insight.
Mm-hmm.
What's fascinating about the Living Legend system is that there's a lot of people who critique it, but when a little while ago when I was doing like press release and media relations stuff for LSFs for a brief time, I was trying my best to put Flesh and Blood on the radar of some of the bigger media outlets like IGN and all these other places, like Polygon. What sold a lot of them when I would interact with them was I would explain to them the Living Legend system, which to them was it's another card game. It's going to come, it's going to go. I don't know if we should devote any of our attention to it. But when I would explain to them the Living Legend system, they would perk up because they'd be like, no standard rotation. There's a whole different sort of balance system. It's called Living Legend, blah, blah, blah. And that's what actually hooked them into actually giving it a look and then popping out a little bit more attention on Flesh and Blood. I'm not saying that I'm responsible for that. I'm merely saying that Living Legends system is a point of intrigue and praise from a lot of gaming veterans.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with that too. Like, absolutely.
Sure.
I think the living system is great.
I think it's a good system as well. The whole thing about a stale meta, I don't buy that at all. I do not buy that. Maybe it's stale in your smaller region, but the thing about it is that overall, yes, Lexi was a very predominant deck, but there was always a predominant deck. Therefore, there was always a stale meta. If your definition of a stale meta is a hero that has a 20% share to 20 to 25% share of the total meta. And yes, she was winning a lot, but the best decks will win a lot. So to say a meta is stale when top eights are very different from region to region to region, I think you have to understand that local metas will always be the same because players, like you alluded to afterwards, usually dig into one or two heroes and go hard on them. Therefore, that won't change. And, you know, we're never going to see another Lexi again. We're never going to see something on those power levels for a while is what I'm thinking, because they're actively throttling back the power levels. So once she's gone and like Iceland, like we're back to the, you know, almost pre-Tales of Aria, but it's actually post-Tales of Aria, where we're not going to see those types of big things. And what I want to ask you about is, I get the concern about players waking up one morning and suddenly their deck isn't good enough. But you make it sound like they went from 0 to 1,000 overnight. Like, there's got to be, to a degree, even for casual players, to have some kind of awareness to the fact that their hero is being threatened to a degree. Because Lexi didn't become Living Legend overnight. We've been talking about Lexi since Outsiders. We've been talking about Lexi for 8 months now or so. Mm-hmm. So that isn't a complete 180 in terms of, like, you know, that kind of whiplash type reaction. I'm very sympathetic to those players because I've seen it before. Players who, once their hero's gone, they just don't care anymore. That is a concern. But, I mean, like, I get it, wherein a player might not realize and they'll show up to an armory, or that, like, mid-season ascension. Like, it's going to be fairly rare. It's going to happen. But I think the players who really are going to care a lot about it are already paying attention to that potential. And it's still going to suck. Don't get me wrong. It's still going to suck, like you said, for Timmy Bravoface, who just shows up and suddenly his favorite hero is garbage and can't even be played. But to talk about casual players and how this is going to affect them, I don't think casual players are going to care, because a lot of casual players are just going to play the heroes against their friends anyways and not care about those kinds of Living Legend ascension and legality. It's when you go to something like a CC Armory where that's no longer the case. And yes, that's where I do have a little, you know, I do have some sympathy there.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that's when I say casual player, I'm talking about like just the local armory players. Like, sure, if we're like kitchen table players are going to do what kitchen table players are going to do, and this doesn't really affect them at all. So like that's fine. But you know, I do like our local meta has a lot of players that are just very casual armory players that they show up to our armories regularly every week, but they're not actively like engaged with the game on social media. They're not really actively following the pro scene. They just really like to show up and play with all their friends, which is what we do at our armories. And as to the point of like this being a not a surprise, if we had made this announcement, you know, a while ago, I might have agreed with this more. But like, we just saw Dromai gain almost 200 points in 2 days. She gained 350 points in 3 weeks. Dromai literally went from a deck that I was very actively recommending to new players because she was sitting at like 180 points to now she has over 500 points and is threatening LL soon. Like if Dromai, and like Worlds is 300 points now. That is a humongous jump. You know, if Dromai wins Worlds, Dromai is now sitting at, you know, between 800 and 900 points and is dancing the cusp of being gone in less than, going from, you know, 200 points to nearly gone in less than a month span. And that's the kind of whiplash that I think isn't great. You know, and like I say, if they sort all this stuff out and if they kind of make sure that we aren't seeing these huge spikes, then I think I'm a little bit more okay with this, because then I think that argument has some credence in that, like, yeah, you can have a hero LL in less than a week, but you'll see it coming. Like, I didn't see this coming with Dromai, and I have more of a finger on the pulse of Dromai than I think almost anybody in the world. And this like meteoric rise shocked me. Like, I have had to come to terms with the fact that Dromai's probably going to Living Legend soon, kind of out of nowhere. And I'm watching this closely. I am confident that there are a lot of players that, you know, play casually that probably picked up Dromai going, oh, she's a 200 point hero. I've got plenty of time. And now suddenly they don't. And I think that's going to cause some issue, and I'm worried about that.
Sure. The other thing is that Dromai's been out for a year and like 3 months, right? Or a year and 4 months. So players have had their time. And like, I get it about the spikes. It's like, damn, they just got 300 points this season. Like, you know, Katsu got 300 points in a season once, and he's nowhere close. And like, he's been stagnant at that rate. There's an opportunity here where Dromai might pick up another couple hundred points and hover at that 800 range, and then never really advance beyond that. And like, I get it. It's like Viserai at a point had a great run and then hasn't done anything in a long time. And again,
yeah,
I am
like five the same way. Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, no, it's exactly. And I think that when we're talking extremes here, there's the extreme of Starvo, which had a chance to Living Legend within 3 months. Like, it was a couple points shy. It took a 6 month span to do it. But that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum are kind of like this more slow burn heroes, like the Bravos and like the OGs, who are kind of just slowly trudging along. They had their initial time in the sun when the options were rather limited, and now power creep kind of pushed them aside, but now there's a throttling back. So I'm wondering for Dromai, even if Dromai does it, even if Dromai wins Worlds and sits at like 850 or wherever she'll be at that point, new heroes are coming that are not necessarily the best for Dromai. Like, it's another big attack popper kind of, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm not saying I don't know what's coming out in heavy hitters, but I think that it's going to be more difficult. And then, like we said, all eyes will still be on Dromai, much like all eyes were on Lexi, like all eyes were on Briar, like all eyes were on Prism, etc. Like, there are people out there just waiting one way or another. I think that there is a opportunity here to have those shakeups happen sooner. And I'll give you a personal example here, because when Lexi ascended, the first thing I did was built a post-Lexi Bravo list that I really wanted to play. I was like, I don't need to worry about Lexi matchups anymore. I can focus on so many others. and that changes the dynamic of the lists I'm going to make. And the crappy part about it was that I couldn't even bring that list to PQ season because PQ season had Lexi's live. And it wasn't a matter of like, oh, damn it. It was more of a matter of like, well, I have to wait to try this new stuff. And that kind of can feel tough as well. So all in all, I mean, I like the accelerated pace. And I think to me, the bigger threat to this, and I want to get your opinion on this, is the point increase is more of a threat to this than anything else.
Yeah, the point increase I'm kind of back and forth on. Like I said, they're talking about introducing so many new heroes. I understand what they're trying to do in that, like they want to make sure, like I said, they don't want us to be in a position where we have 150 heroes in our game, you know. So like making sure that we can kind of keep a pace to where we are rotating out as many heroes as we're bringing back in, I think has some merit. I do worry a little bit just because Flesh and Blood is a game has really kind of defined itself on this ability to really associate yourself with a single hero. And I think that's very cool. And I think it's something you just don't see in a lot of other card games. And I want to encourage that more, not less. And the increase in points makes that a little bit harder. It makes me feel a little less safe committing to a single hero. But again, like I say, if they're making sure, like I think that is the thing that LS is very aware of already. So I can kind of hope that they're making sure to give more backup options to the heroes that may be threatening Living Legend, so that they can have something either immediately or very soon after a hero rotates to kind of move into that still feels like home. And so that's like, it's concerning, but it's something that I can see LSS at least being aware of.
I can see, like, the point increase to me is coupled with the fact that there's more heroes coming out next year. These are all drafted. It's all draftable sets next year. Whether it's 3 or 4, I'm guessing it's 4. And the 15 heroes, I don't even know if the heroes that are coming, like, we might get, I don't know. I have no clue. But what they said in that article was 15 plus new playable heroes, whether that's Blitz or not, who knows. My suspicion was that we were getting something like 3 new heroes, like adult heroes in each draftable set. And then I'm getting, like, maybe some of them have a younger version. I don't know, man. Like, it's
I'm assuming there's at least like one new like supplemental set, like we saw the professor box where like there's 3 new heroes in that box. And so like I'm kind of assuming it's going to be like roughly like 3 to 4, like three heroes per new actual set, and then like a supplemental set or 2 that has some extra side heroes. Is sort of what I'm expecting. I can't imagine them doing 3 sets with 5 new heroes in them each. That seems a little intense.
Yeah, that might be a little bit much. There's also a question coming in from Virabhadra. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, but based on your response to the new Living Legend system, do you think that LSS is actively trying to rotate heroes? I'm going to just briefly answer this quickly and say, yeah, of course. Like they're
Yeah, I don't think there's much of a question of that. I think they've pretty much already stated as much, that, you know, there are some of the heroes that they definitely kind of want to push out. Like, you know, they've got a new design philosophy. I think, you know, with Brian Gottlieb kind of more at the helm now, and the way they're kind of rebalancing some things. I think it's pretty obvious that they've said, you know, hey, there's some heroes that we don't want to have to balance around these heroes anymore, you know. So like we kind of want to just like give these heroes their moment in the sun, let them do their thing, and then send them off into the sunset so that we can kind of pick back up with this new stuff. You know, I think it was pretty obvious the moment I got, so like Tome of Imperial Flame was my spoiler card, and that was very obvious to me. The second I got sent that card, I was like, oh, they want to LL Dromai. Okay. I see how this is going. Like, that was a very clear, here's your moment in the sun, go have fun with this, then we're gonna just get Dromai out and work on a post-Dromai world.
Well, they've had opportunities now, over the course of 2 plus 3 years or so of the Living Legend system to see how long with the point system that exists, how long it takes for these heroes to actually go over the top. And I think that there's a lifespan for some of them that they're just thinking, it's like, damn, I'm like, we wanted this to already be gone and it's not gone yet. So maybe we just dial the knob up a little bit and throttle up here so that when something does win, there's more options. But the thing about it is also like it's the illusion of choice with the amount of heroes that are available now, because in reality, there are some that aren't represented in big tournaments at all. There are some that are maybe 1 or 2. And then it's usually this pocket of 10 heroes that have the most amount of representation. And for the record, for those of you who aren't like super big into card games, and this might be one of your first forays into competitive card gaming, 10 options is a
wild,
bountiful amount of options. Even if your options are like mid tier 2 kind of stuff and not tier 1 or 0, like the fact that you can bring any of 10 possible decks and top 8 a tournament is wild.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's actually, I think one of my favorite things about this game is that there's so much diversity, and this game rewards so much, even just like playing some of these kind of wild cards. Like, decks in this game have such dramatically different game plans. You can actually get a lot of percentage points by just like playing a thing that your opponent has no idea what you're doing. And I think that's something that you see very, very little of in games like Magic. Like, every deck, kind of has different tools and different, strategies, but like their game plan feels very fundamentally the same. And in Flesh and Blood, I think that there's so much variance and so much like, I have to really know what my opponent is trying to doing and how I need to react to counter that is so important that like, you can just get like, I mean, I did it a bunch with Dromai. I herald a lot of my Pro Tour success to the fact that I played an aggressive Dromai deck and a bunch of my opponents sat down and just had no idea what they were doing. Because they had tested against a bunch of these big, slow control Dromai decks, and they sideboard into that and they have a game plan for that. And they just start, playing like we're going to play a long, slow game. And then I just go Rabble Blaze Breaking Point. And they're just like, I don't know what to do anymore.
It feels good. We did run a poll here that I guess might be a ongoing feature here for the show. Works well for Wampa Radio, so we're doing it at Instant Speed. The Instant Speed poll was, do you like the changes to the Living Legend system? 243 votes. A resounding yes. 49.4% say yes, they like it. 27.6% say no. The remainder are indifferent. I was basically indifferent to it, mainly because not that I don't care. It's just at the same time, whether something ascends or doesn't, I've lived in enough metas and card games where I've seen the same thing stagnate for years, not just months. So like I'm fine with it. If things want to change quickly or they want to stay at the same pace, I'm indifferent. But you saying you like the changes overall, or?
I think it's a hashtag. It's complicated. I think the extra points increase has a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and that one I kind of feel like I don't want to make a judgment on until I see the rest of LSS's plan. Like if we're gonna rotate out a bunch of heroes and not give people kind of those new outlets, I think that's a problem. But I think, like I say, I think that's something that LSS is very aware of, and I have every faith that they are working on that. And I think that's going to be a big part of why we're going to see 15 new heroes this year, is to say like, all right, let's go ahead and already let's queue up that new Dromai, let's queue up that new Icelander, let's queue up that new Lexi, let's queue up the new, Bravo maybe, because Bravo's starting to get a little up there. Let's just go ahead and have that new Bravo ready. And I think that'll probably be a big part of why we're seeing so many new heroes this year. And I think that goes a long way to making me feel better about these quicker rotations. So, like I say, the only one, like we've kind of talked about, ad nauseum already, but the 5-day window for rotation is still the thing that like I want to have faith that LSS knows what they're doing, and I know that they have. This is not a decision that they have made very quickly and without a lot of thought, and so like hopefully they know more about this than I do, and that they've checked all these metrics and that they feel like this is the best thing for the game. And like, I'm here for it. I think it will create some very interesting ProQuest metas, and it'll make some very exciting last minute shakeups. I just hope that they have considered that there are negatives to this too. And I think there are people that will be impacted negatively for it. And I just hope the pros outweigh the cons.
So let's talk about Dromai, the deck that you're obviously most known for, that you've innovated, that you've put on the map and legitimized to a great degree here. Dromai has an incredible representation at major tournaments, a very good conversion rate, a very good presence in top 8, and win rate as well. So Dromai with Lexi...
Does she have a good win rate?
Well, I mean, she has a good win rate in the sense that a lot of good players are playing her, winning and going high up in the Swiss rounds to the top 8s. Like she is definitely winning. Like, let's be completely honest here. There are going to be
right now.
Well, sure, but there's always going to be the experience for the player who just picks up a list and net decks it off the internet and brings it to a tournament, not knowing at all how to play it. Like, Flesh and Blood is not a very paint by numbers type of game for the most part. There are heroes that kind of feels like that to a degree, like, Viscerai, non-attack, Rosetta Thorn, like that. Just continue and rinse and repeat and do that. But Dromai doesn't always feel like that. It feels more of a little complex hero. But now that Lexi's gone, do you consider Dromai to be the best deck in the format right now?
I don't know. I think Dromai looks very good. Dromai as a hero has always been one that I've had a hard time putting on tier lists. Like I've talked about this with a lot of other people too, where, everyone wants to say like, oh, well, Dromai's the best deck, or Dromai's the second best deck, or whatever. But Dromai as a hero, I think, has such a demanding skill curve that who pilots that deck matters so much more to Dromai than I feel like almost any other hero in the game. I think there are a couple others that really kind of fall into that same category too, but Dromai in particular, I think if we're saying, Dromai in the hands of just like anyone off the street, is this the best deck? No, absolutely not. If we're just saying, hey, what is the best deck to just pick up and learn in 2 weeks and take to my local ProQuest or my local, whatever, Dromai's absolutely not the best deck. Like Dromai, that kind of player is just probably not going to do particularly well in Dromai. If we're saying what is the best deck to take to a pro tour in the hands of a player with 10,000 reps on the deck, I think Dromai looks very well positioned right now. But it's like I say, I think comfort on the deck is going to be a big thing, and I do think we're going to see a lot of people. Like, I think we saw this in Melbourne. A lot of people picked up Dromai very short. Like, I think people saw the Dallas results and went, man, Dromai's the best deck in the meta right now. I'm going to pick up Dromai, and got crushed.
Right.
We saw Dromai with a very high representation at day 1 and a abysmal conversion rate to day 2. Because of exactly that, where like Dromai as a hero is very well positioned, but it's a hero that you have to know your game plan, and your game plan into different decks is dramatically different.
I do want to make a distinction, because you mentioned, if somebody picks it up and brings it to, it's not the best deck. I think the proper term is not the best fit. I think it's still the best.
Sure.
You have to, we're looking at this through a lens of, if all things equal and all the players being equally practiced on all decks, the player, I think, that has the same level of practice and understanding of a Dromai deck is probably one of the best poised to win a tournament. Like, if all players have the same amount of reps on their decks against all the other decks, all things equal in that regard, Dromai has to be one of a small pool of heroes that can likely win this tournament. And I'm saying Fi is well positioned. I don't know, is Icelander good right now? I'm like, yeah.
This meta is very kind of wide open right now. I think that's actually one of the things that excites me going into Worlds is, after Dallas, there was a lot of talk of, oh, well, it's just going to be a Dromai field. It's going to be, everyone's picking up Dromai. It's Dromai all the way up. But, then we immediately went from that into Melbourne, And we see the exact opposite. We see a very wide field full of a lot of rogue decks that people were not expecting. We saw both a Max deck and a Dash.io deck in the top 8 of Melbourne that people did not have on their radar at all. Particularly the Dash.io, like 14-0 going into the finals is wild for a deck that nobody even thought was playable. I think now going into Worlds, there's gonna be it's gonna be the Wild West, and I'm kind of excited for it. Like I say, I think Dromai's well positioned, but then I also think Dromai also has a big target on her back, and Dromai is a deck that is, I don't want to say easy to hate out, but very obvious in some of the ways to attack that deck. Like you're gonna see just average popper counts in decks go up. And that does affect Dromai's market share essentially. But like I think Bravo looks very good. I think Azalea looks good. Fi and Katsu are there. I think OG Dash looks really good. Bravo or New Dash I think is very interesting, and now we've got people really working on that. It's wild. I think going into this meta, I think Dromai is the deck to beat. I don't think Dromai is the best deck in the field. I genuinely don't know what the best deck in the field is. I think this is going to be a lot of testing and a lot of players trying to just figure out what works best.
So let me ask you this then. What are Dromai's sort of best matchups and worst matchups? And you don't have to go into too much detail if you don't want to, but ultimately people are going to look at this, and there's always debate about it. It's like who's favored, Dromai or Guardian, or who's favored, Dromai or Brute, or this or that. So in your expertise, in your infinite but actually finite wisdom when it comes to Dromai,
it's infinite. It's infinite.
What are Dromai's best matchups and worst matchups?
See, this actually kind of comes back to this player skill discussion, where I think one of the things that I really like about Dromai is that I think a lot of her matchups are player dependent. I think Dromai gives the pilot a lot of skill expression, which makes a lot of matchups very hard for me to say this matchup is favored or this matchup is unfavored. It's why we have these kind of jokes about like these 80-80 matchups with Dromai and Bravo, or Dromai and Brute, and Dromai and I can talk to a bunch of Dromai players and say, what are your best matchups? And they can give me a list. And then I can talk to a bunch of players who play those decks and say, give me a list of your best matchups. And they will put Dromai on that list. You see like the Dromai Azalea one, I think has been a very like hot debate lately, where I feel very confident in the Azalea matchup, but then like I know a bunch of Azalea players that feel very confident in the Dromai matchup. Same thing with Bravo. I am currently sitting at I think 9-1 or 10-2 or something around there in ranked games against Bravos between like Battle Hardened in Atlanta and now. I feel very confident in the Bravo matchup, but I've talked to a bunch of people that are like, yeah, we're expecting a lot of Bravo or a lot of Dromai at Worlds. We're all going to play Bravo to target that. So it's interesting. It's actually kind of hard to really say like, what are her favorite matches? I think the thing that really appeals to me about Dromai is that skill expression plays such a large role in determining what is favored and what is not for her. That said, Ninja's always a little scary.
Okay, like that's what I get it, and you want to give credence to the player playing the deck, but again, all things equal here. On paper, there's gonna be some mismatches, and I want to know what those are.
That's what I'm saying. Like I think it's hard. Like I don't.
Like the obvious mismatch here is if it's like, okay, well, it's going to be like Michael Fang versus the guy at the bus stop that doesn't know the game. Yeah, like it doesn't come down to what decks they're playing. It comes down to the player. But if it's Michael Fang versus you, let's say, at that final table, that's a matchup where both players are at their peak. And there's got to be an advantage that does come down to deck selection after a while.
Like, I do think Fi is one of the matchups for sure that like we can have some struggles into. I think it's probably one of the harder matchups. Bravo is an interesting one. Like Bravo is a matchup that I feel like I can never feel comfortable in. I am hesitant to say Bravo is unfavored, and because I don't actually think I feel unfavored into it, but I think there are matchups that I think I feel like I have to work harder at, and I think Bravo is probably one of those. I think Fi is one of those. Katsu is one of those, and then like the matchups where I feel like I have less stress. Are the matchups where I can kind of execute my game plan a little bit more cleanly without having to worry about weird, more niche interactions. Like I kind of feel like Azalea is a matchup where I can kind of just execute my game plan. Just here are my dragons. It is on you to deal with this. Same thing kind of with Icelander, where I think there's a lot of challenge in that for the Dromai player, but at the same time, they're very much matchups where I can go, here's my board, you figure out how to solve this problem. And those are the matchups I think where I feel the most comfortable in most of the time.
Right. Putting a lot of the decision-making process to the opponent. And then, yeah. And like I like that too, because oftentimes if it's the same thing like playing control, a lot of the decision making is going to be on me as a control player, how to block, when to trade damage, things like that. And I trust my own prep and I trust my own things. On your side, it's kind of like I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to trust that you're going to make mistakes. And I'm going to trust that you're not going to optimally deal with what I'm presenting. And then I'm going to accumulate and accrue all of these percentage points of advantage over time that eventually lead to a victory. Against a good player, though, they're going to oftentimes just answer the bell in the best way possible. You're going to say, here's what I got. And they're going to be, I don't care. I know how to deal with this. And and like that was the thing when I was playing Oldhim into those games. It's like, I know your game plan and I can identify when you are not attacking me or approaching this matchup the way that is most threatening to me. Like, I went on this wild streak of never losing to Dromais until I lost to DM Armada, like, early in a morning one time, because he took that proper line, which was, attack my arcane barrier, bring back Tumult, like, just take out my equipment, and then burn me down with arcane when I couldn't do anything for it. Like, that's just the approach. The thing about it now is that Dromai originally was this big dragon kind of thing. You get the cool toys, you want to play with them, and then it evolved into like a red line aggro, and there's various different ways to play it. Can you tell us what the predominant archetypes of Dromai are currently?
Nope. Because honestly, I have no idea. Like I kind of alluded to this a little earlier in the show. Tome does some wacky things to Dromai. Tome fundamentally wants to change the way Dromai is played. And I think there's still no consensus on exactly how to incorporate that. So Tome wants you to do two things, and those two things are kind of diametrically opposed to one another. Tome wants you to play these big, powerful cards like, Tumultai and Dominia, and even like Vincerica and Necria, these like big, expensive, powerful cards to really maximize the potential of this card. Because the ceiling on Tome is wild. The ceiling on Tome is incredible. I have had turns where I can go Uvia into Tumultai on a single turn because of Tome, which is 7 resources in a red line deck. Crazy things. But the other kind of side of that coin is Tome also wants you to play red line. Drawing blues on a Tome turn feels miserable because you can't pitch blues to the Tome. There's also even the small chance that you play a Tome on a small hand size and then just like draw 2 blues, and now you have to just banish your hand and you probably just lost the game on the spot. So like that's really scary. So you're asking players to play a deck that wants more expensive cards and fewer resources to cast those cards with. And I think we're seeing a lot of Dromai players trying to figure out how to kind of merge those two things together. And it's hard. It's very hard. I mean, like if you look at the results from Dallas, we saw 4 Dromai decks in the top 8, and all of them were very fundamentally different. All of them approached the tome problem in very different ways. We saw some of them running few to no big expensive cards and not maximizing the value of tome, and just kind of playing it at a more reduced value, but playing more consistently. We saw some going really hard on trying to maximize the value of tome, but introducing some inconsistency in their deck. We saw one of our decks that just didn't even play tome at all. That was just like, you know what? I don't know how to make this card work in my framework. I'm just not even going to play it. And so I don't know. Like I've been brewing on this pretty hard, and I've got a couple of lists that I'm reasonably happy with, but even my list right now, I don't think I've found that real sweet spot where I feel like I am balancing both maximizing tome value and still maintaining that really firm consistency that has always been Dromai's strength.
All right, so we've got some questions from people concerning Dromai. First one is from Pat Smashgood, good friend, yeah. Pat, off the rails. Go check it out.
I love Pat. I did a big long Dromai deck tech with him a couple of months back.
Sweet, Pat. Good people. Let's see. Pat asking, can she dive into how a card like Tome of Imperial Flame shows up and changes the Dromai landscape? What shifts are made within the deck that moved it from an outlier in top tables to the most represented in such a short time?
So I think we pretty much just kind of covered a lot of that. I think the card is definitely unquestionably powerful. It puts Dromai in a position where she now Dromai's biggest drawback prior to this was that she's incentivized to play all these reds, to play, because pitching reds is inherently an inefficient thing. There's a reason that no deck other than Dromai just is excited to pitch a bunch of reds. It's inherently inefficient. So Dromai's big thing was to find a way to pitch reds and make efficient plays out of it. And that's always been a very delicate balance for her. Now, Tome of Imperial Flame not only is effectively a blue pitch on its own, it just can make 3 resources between Tome and activating Flamescale Furnace. Just makes 3 resources, in addition to the potential of making more resources by pitching other cards and then activating Tome or activating Furnace. It is a massive amount of resources for a deck that's very constricted on resources normally. And in addition, providing a large amount of her other resource, which is Ash. So Tome basically lets Dromai, this deck that's really built around these very tight, very normally inefficient plays, ignore that entire restriction for a turn. She now has a surplus of Ash, a surplus of resources, and Tome says, go nuts. And that's wild. I do kind of think, though, that, he's asking about what is it that Tome just sort of catapulted Dromai into the spotlight. I do think Tome is very powerful, and I think Tome absolutely impacted Dromai's, win percentages. But I've been a big advocate for Dromai for a long time, and particularly these red line Dromai lists that a lot of people have been very, historically very hesitant to pick up. A lot of the other big, well-known Dromai players have been very kind of opposed to playing red line because they value that more big dragon approach. And I think we saw a lot of players go, okay, I'm going to try this red line thing out now because of Tome, and then just realize the fundamental power that I've been preaching for months. That deck, even without Tome, is a very powerful thing and does a very powerful thing. And I think Tome both helped just make the deck more powerful, but also just make people actually try the deck and go, oh, crap, maybe we were wrong about this from the beginning. Maybe this really has just been a powerful deck the whole time.
Next one is from our friend Crow. Not really a question, just want to thank you for taking about 20 minutes to go over every choice you made for your deck at Pro Tour Baltimore. You were a joy to talk to and showed a lot of patience and passion while talking to me and my friend who never played Illusionist before. Well, there you go. See?
Dude, I love our community. I think Flesh and Blood has, hot take. I think Flesh and Blood has the best community of any TCG I've ever played in my life. And I've played a lot of TCGs. And yeah, like when I first started out, I got a lot of help from a lot of players and a lot of, podcasters and all things like, I think you and I have talked about this before. Like when I very first started off in Flesh and Blood and started just doing just art and altars, like you were one of the first people that was like, hey, this is a really cool thing you're doing. Let me promote this. Let me get some work done and show it to all my followers and all my fans. I want to support you. I want to really put your work out in front of a lot of people. And that meant a lot to me, and I really do. I appreciate that. And so it's kind of been a big thing for me that when I first started, I had a lot of help from our community. I had a lot of people both teaching me the game and really wanting to promote my work. And so I've always tried to make an effort to pay that forward. If anyone out there ever just wants to just chat Dromai or just wants to come say hi, please come approach me in an event. Come say hey, and I will sit down and chat and talk Dromai for hours. I love it. It's my favorite topic. And I'm so happy that I'm in a position where I can, pay some of this forward. I can support more new creators, and I can, help more younger players get access to some of these, professional testing tools. And I love it. It makes me happy, and I just want to see this game grow and flourish. And anything I can do to make that better for everybody, that means a lot to me.
Next one from Sigma or DOS asking, what Spanish food dishes are you eyeing in Barcelona? And why should they be spicy? First of all, they should be spicy because live a little, you punks. Okay, eat spicy foods. It's the best.
Yeah, so I am very excited. I'm a little tense because I'm vegetarian, and I don't know what the vegetarian options are going to be in Barcelona.
The menu's doesn't have meat in it.
That is true. I could eat the menu.
You could eat the menu.
Menu is not historically terribly spicy, which is unfortunate. But I am pretty well renowned for my love of spicy food. I literally have a here, hang on. Oh, okay, I've got it right here. This is like my trophy.
What are you digging out of there? you have to Buffalo Wild Wings. Is there any more American arena of dominance than eating wings in copious amounts at a Buffalo Wild Wings?
So this is my memento. This was PT1. I didn't play in the Pro Tour. I'd only been playing the game for maybe a month or two at that point. I didn't play in the Pro Tour, but I did go to the calling, and I day 2'd that calling, and it was my first time ever day 2ing a major event. And so me and a bunch of people all went out to celebrate. And so yeah, they had their super spicy hot wing challenge, which I didn't even actually get to do the actual challenge because I'm vegetarian. And they were like, yeah, it has to be with the wings. I'm like, you guys have cauliflower wings. Can I just do it with that? They're like, no, according to the rules, you can't. And I was like, all right, fine. I just want the cauliflower wings with the blazing sauce and a side of mango habanero extra. and so I just sat there just eating this just nuclear hot stuff. And the waitress was like, is that not hot? And I was like, it's all right.
Yeah.
And she's just staring, watching me just have these extra hot wings and then dipping them in extra hot sauce. And she just goes, I'm going to go get you the headband.
Yeah, well, for those who are listening to this on an audio, she showed us a headband branded with Buffalo Wild Wings on it, like she got it at a dojo somewhere. So you are officially a black belt at eating spicy sauce. But so I love spicy as well. I once went to a chicken wing spot outside of Toronto somewhere where the hottest ones they had, I ordered them to go, and they made me sign a medical waiver. they're like, you can't sue us if you die or whatever. Like, we have trained medical staff here, but if you take them to go, you got to sign all this shit. And I was like, okay. I took them. It was me and my buddy, and we were gonna go to a concert that night, and then the next day we were gonna go kick it at my buddy's cottage somewhere for a few days. So we ate one each of the 8 wings, and they were unreal. Like, it was unholy levels of spice, and I can handle spice. Like, nobody's business. It's not an issue. This was just like another level. Like, it was unreal. I had my head under the sink pouring cold water. I was like rinsing my mouth out with like milk and stuff. Like, it was just the worst experience. But we took those wings the next day to my buddy's cottage, where I know everybody was going to be drunk out of their minds, and no one has any respect for other people's food. So I just put them in a container and left them in the fridge. And I'm like, let's wait. And lo and behold, at like 2 a.m, we're all like beyond drunk, sitting by a campfire, and one of my friends comes like leaping out of the cottage, screaming, like swearing, cursing, looking for like beverage, and we were all laughing because I told them what happened, and so we all hid the beers from him, and then he jumped in the lake like mouth first. Yeah. But that's not pleasant, beautiful, right? Like, I like spice with flavor and whatever. That was just, and don't get me started about the repercussions of the next day. Like, I don't even want to go on that. So yeah. Next question. I just to actually answer the question. I am very looking forward to some Spanish cuisine, and some very spicy Spanish cuisine sounds amazing, and I'm pretty excited for it. I want to have a beer with Pablo Pintor.
That sounds great.
I almost never drink anymore, but if I do, it's for occasions, and if I do for an occasion, it's usually we're going for it. But I want to have a beer with Pablo sitting somewhere warm. That's the plan.
Yeah, shout out to the Sunflower Samurai's Twitter account too. They've been like hardcore posting all the travel updates, and like, here's stuff to do and here's things to see in Barcelona, and that's been pretty awesome. I've been following their Twitter account pretty closely for that.
No, they've been very helpful. Next question from William at Tables and Legs, asking, how are you feeling heading into Worlds? How has testing been going? I hear your locals are stacked.
Is that the William Table and Legs of I love Will. He's he has his own little UPF channel, and they do some pretty great work, and I show up on theirs pretty regular. And yeah, our locals is cracked. We've got some wild competition locals. But I don't know. I'm actually pretty excited about this Worlds. This is going to be, everybody's kind of got eyes on Dromai, and so this is a good opportunity to really show what this hero can do, which is always going to be fun. But at the same time, competition is going to be tougher than ever. I think every major event I have been to has been harder than the last, and I don't think this Worlds is going to be any exception. So I'm definitely not going in this, assuming I'm going to roll over anybody. This is going to be tough. This is going to be fierce. And there's a lot of people who are putting in a lot of time in this. And like we kind of mentioned earlier, the meta right now is just wide open. I think there's going to be a lot of chance for people that we don't know their names yet to really shine in this meta too. And so that's going to be really cool.
And we're not talking about Charmer. We're talking about actual people that we don't know their names of.
Which one's Charmer? No, I'm kidding. I kid. I know who Tannen is. He's
you know.
Nah, Charmer's great. But yeah, no, I think this World is exciting. This will actually be the first time I have ever traveled overseas in my life. I've never left the United States ever.
Loser.
I'm not in a country that's a loft apartment over a great party.
You know what? That's like
come down to.
That's like
to
saying.
It's
like saying the only movie I've ever seen is Twilight.
I've seen Twilight 2.
Well, right, sure, no problem, whatever. It's all good. That's what that sounds like.
I literally left PT Baltimore, went home, and applied for my passport like that week.
Beauty.
So the fact that I not only get to travel overseas for the first time in my life, but get to do it playing this card game that I love is so unreal to me, and it's going to be amazing. I'm super excited for it.
So the most important question will be our last from Captive Goat, asking, can you ask her why goats are so much better than cheetahs and dragons combined? Look, I wasn't going to add this one to the question. You requested that this be put in here, but by all means, please explain to us why this is a thing.
See, like, she's going to make me say goats suck, because I don't think goats suck. Goats are adorable, and I love goats. But cheetahs are amazing, and dragons are dragons. So, like, I don't know how we compete with dragons. I do. She's a good friend of mine. Captive Goat is fantastic. But I have a deep love for zoos and zoo animals. Cheetahs are one of my favorites. Cheetahs, wolves, and hyenas are like my top 3, and they're fantastic. But goats are acceptable. They're good dragon food.
I'm going with rhinos.
Dude, rhinos are cool.
Rhinos are awesome.
Have you like been like, I don't know if you go to zoos a lot. Rhinos are one of those animals that you're like, that looks like it's a big animal. And then you're like next to one, you're like, oh, that's a big animal.
Yeah, they're just tanks. They're like
huge.
They're just gigantic armored tanks. It's unreal. So them, peregrine falcons, and cuttlefish, like those cephalopods that can like change their color and do all this like they're crazy. Like
cuttlefish are cool.
Yeah, like octopi and stuff like that. They're where it's at.
We need to have more like official Flesh and Blood post-event zoo trips. This is something that I was actually talking with some of the Wolfpack guys about. Like, I back when I was doing alters like for Star City very regularly, I made it a habit of every time I was in a new city, I would always go to the zoo. And I've not been doing that as often. I did after Dallas. Dallas was the first time I've been back to a zoo in like about a year. But
doesn't it make you sad though? Like, I see these animals, and yeah, like for the most part, they're being well taken care of, but they just look so sad, some of them, and it just breaks my heart. Like, I'm there just staring at the polar bear in the middle of July, hating its life because it's a polar bear, and it's like 100 degrees outside, and it's just looking at me like, dude. And I'm like, dude, I know. I had to pay to come here to have you look at me and say, dude, like, trust me, I know.
I will say this, when you're picking a zoo to go check out, check, like, do a little bit of research on these zoos. The AZA, the Association for Zoos and Aquariums, has a lot of very strict, like, this is things that you can do with an animal enclosure. This is things you can't. And they actually do care quite a bit about, making sure these animals are happy and healthy and enriched. And as long as you're in a zoo that has animals that are well taken care of, these animals tend to be very happy. I think there's a big thing to be said to be taken care of as an animal. These animals in captivity have 2 to 3 times the lifespan of an animal in the wild, just because they're taken care of. They have access to medical treatments that they're just, a wild animal doesn't have. They don't have,
internet,
the constant fear. Yeah, they don't even have Wi-Fi in the savannah in Africa. It's I don't know what they do.
That's why the cheetahs are so fast. They got to go spread the word. They just don't have text messaging.
Yeah, but like just being able to like have a life where you're just like, yeah, I'm just chill. There's nothing actively trying to kill me on a daily basis, does a lot for an animal's health and enjoyment, and quality of life. So, the polar bear in like 90-degree heat is probably not super happy, but I guarantee you that like those polar bears will probably have a big pool of water that is freezing cold that they are more than happy to just sort of chill out in.
Oh yeah, no, they had water and stuff. Like, they don't, like, I get it. It just, again, but I also live under the guise that I'm like, oh, if I free this polar bear, it's gonna befriend me and I can ride it to like the PQ. Like, that's kind of.
I have always said, I'm like, every time I go to a zoo, I'm like, man, I want to pet all of these animals. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to die.
Yeah, for sure.
I am just accepted the fact that I am going to die by one point in my life encountering a wild animal that I am convinced wants to be my friend.
Basically, dude, that's what like half of the premises of these like true crime podcasts are about. It's just somebody attracting somebody else and then ends up killing them. Like that's usually how it goes. But you're not just running solo anymore. There's a whole other animal species that you are now essentially creating an alliance with.
That's true.
I saw it on your mug, so you
Awoo?
Oh my! Did you just ooh like?
This is.
No, I heard it as ooh, and
no, this is not an ooh.
That's a husky, right? So
what? No, it's a wolf.
Is it?
Yeah, it's like a little.
Why does it look like it's coming straight out of the grotto at the Playboy Mansion?
I don't know. I kind of love it though.
Yeah. Well, so tell us about that real quick.
So yeah, there's I guess I can make the official announcement. I will be joining the Wolfpack. And I'm pretty excited. It's going to be me and my good friend Merritt Kemp is also going to be joining with me. So the Wolfpack will have a couple of new members, and I'm super excited for this. The Wolfpack have always been just really good friends of mine. We've traveled to all these events, and every event I'm just hanging out with these guys. And if I was telling some of the guys yesterday actually that if you had asked me a year ago, hey, do you want to be on the Wolfpack? It would have been like, oh, this would be such a great opportunity for testing and to play with these professional players and to increase my skill at the game, which is still very much true. But now it's just, hey, these are a bunch of my friends, and I get an opportunity to just spend more time testing and playing with people that I really like and I really love and I really respect. And I think more than anything, that just excites the hell out of me. And so I think that's going to be really cool.
All right. So I'm going to ask you this because I think, can you name in under 20 seconds all the members of the Wolfpack?
No.
Yeah. Okay. That's an honest response. Like, I think if they achieve 1,000 members, they ascend to Living Legend status as well. They're a big team now. That's not a detriment in any way. Again, pool your resources, your wisdom, your insight, your knowledge for sure. It's for the betterment of everyone involved. It just seems like this is one hell of an entity now. Yeah,
I do think they have had a pretty tight lid on recruiting for a little while now. So I think it's a very big honor to be invited because of this, because like they're getting big, and I think they've kind of got to a point where they're like, all right, we don't really want new members anymore, but for them to still come to both myself and Merrick and say, hey, we don't really want new members, but we really want you to, I think it's really cool, and that means a lot to me.
I am perfectly ready to decline somebody's invite. I'm ready, just to ship them over. Flake's ready to decline your invite to your team.
I will pass the message along.
Yeah, until they do, and then I'm like, psych, I'm in, sucker. All right, so we do have a little bit more that we want to squeeze out of Mara Faris here in terms of Dromai tips. That'll be a Patreon tier 3 exclusive. If you want to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/instantspeed. For as little as $dollars a month, you can go ahead and support the channel. But for you tier 3 legends, we've got Mara Faris giving you tips on how to play and how to beat Dromai. So, well, there you go. Those are pretty good tips.
Yeah, I think there was sort of two on each side, but I think those are two very... Two good ones.
Two good ones on each side.
Pretty in-depth tips on each side.
That's all we need is just two, and we'll get there. But thank you so much for sharing those, and thank you so much for being on the show. I know that it's always a joy to have you here. As I lost my cursor, I'm trying to bring my notes up, but there we go. We're back. But yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I appreciate this. This has been fun. It's always a treat.
Well, I appreciate you as well. So where can people get more Mara Faris related content should they want to hear you even more?
So I'm typically pretty active on Twitter, just at Blackwing Studio on Twitter. I do, like we kind of mentioned, I do custom art and altars. I have an Etsy store that is also Blackwing Studio on Etsy, where I sell custom tokens and original arts and things like that. So you can always check out my shop there. Otherwise, the other big one is I have a Patreon. My Patreon is also just Blackwing Studio on Patreon. I have a Dromai primer there if you want to learn a lot more about Dromai than you ever thought you needed to know. The primer is now 46 pages long, 47 pages at this point. It's gotten wildly out of control. But there's a lot of knowledge in that, and a lot of the things that I've really gone deep dive on some of this Dromai stuff. So that's a really good resource. Plus, we have a patron Discord community now that has been a fantastic community. I'm super shout out to my patron Discord. All the people there are wonderful. We have a good community, and we have a no dumb questions rule in the patron Discord where we can really have a lot of open and frank discussions about Dromai, as well as like other topics and decks and things like that. And so yeah, if you're looking for more Dromai or just to hang out with a bunch of cool people, the patron Discord is a great place to be.
Beauty. All right, friends, that does it for another episode of Instant Speed Podcast. I want to thank our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards. Go to kayfabecards.com. Get your singles, get your sealed product. Go to kayfabecards.com. Be who you want to be at Kayfabe Cards. Also, to Rivalry Toronto. Rivalry is Ontario's premier esports sportsbook betting company that offers fully regulated wagering in esports, traditional sports, and casino, founded in downtown Toronto in 2016. Rivalry offers the best odds on your favorite titles such as Counter-Strike 2, League of Legends, Dota 2, Valorant, and more. They also recently launched its exclusive feature, Same Game Esports Combos, the perfect way to level up your esports wagers. So check them out as well. More details are in the comments and the details, the show notes, or whatever the hell you want to call it on this video. And Mara, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Flake. This has been great.
No worries. And we'll see everybody in Barcelona, friends. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning. Catch you next time on ISP. Bye-bye.
Well, I work